Great. Thanks for the introduction, Rob, and thanks to everyone for joining today's webinar. And our topic today is all about how to read and interpret your financial aid award letter. Our under-resourced students and their families to afford and complete college. Today's lesson is one of our most popular modules and lessons that we offer here at GLOW. And as many of you guys know, especially for the seniors that are looking at submitting their intent to register at colleges, we know that this time of year is really critical when a lot of financial aid award information is getting received by students, and it's just very critical in terms of that decision-making process. So moving forward, today's objectives. Great. So we're talking about three main things today. First, we want to make sure everyone on the call here today understands what an award letter is and what information is commonly listed on one. Secondly, we're going to be looking at some sample financial aid award letters and then determining which is the best offer. And third, we're going to be looking at tips for navigating the award letter process, as well as key questions that you want to be asking before you accept a financial aid award package. There are going to be some sections of the presentation where I'm asking for people to chime in and use that chat feature. That way folks can really get a chance to interact with me, and I can kind of see you know, some of the common responses that I'm hoping to anticipate from some of the questions I'm throwing out. So moving on, I know one of the first questions people ask when they learn about these award letters is, what exactly is a financial aid award letter? Well, just to break it down first, we first want to look at what financial aid is. And financial aid is basically any type of funding that helps cover your college costs. It's often divided into three different categories. So the first is money you receive. These are things like grants and scholarships, often called gift aid. These are free funds that you don't have to repay. The second category is money you earn. So examples of this would be things like work study. And the third category is money you borrow. So that's looking at federal loans. So kind of moving on to the financial aid award letter process of this all. A financial aid award letter then is a notification from colleges which outlines any financial aid that you as a student are eligible to receive, and it also lists out what amounts you'll be getting. And these letters, again, are a combination of free aid, gift aid, as well as self-help aid, and that includes work study and loans. What financial aid award letters are trying to do is come up with a total value that's pretty close to a student's financial need. And in case you haven't heard the term financial need before, financial need is basically the figure that you get when you look at the cost of attendance, so the total cost associated with going to any given college, and you're subtracting out your family contribution, and that's determining your financial need. So it's the job of the colleges then to look at each student's financial need and try to come as close as possible to that number when they're creating a financial aid package. So this next slide is looking at what's on a financial aid award letter. And this is one area where I really want to interact with some of you guys. And if you guys could chat to me, which of these items here posted on the screen you think are commonly listed on your financial aid award letter. We'll go through some of the most relevant ones here in a second. So I want to open up the chat line. So if you guys could chat to me, just the letter here, any letters that you think you commonly would find on a financial aid award letter. We'll go through some of those responses.
We have a couple of A's. Parent plus loan. F and W. A, B, C, a lot of F's. O, S, and T, M.
O.
D.
D as in dog?
D as in dog. W.
Right.
I. M.
Yep.
W, V. A, B, F, S, I, L, G. ABCGDEIMOKG
O,
H
K,
L
O. Great.
N J.
Great.
All right.
All right. So we've got kind of a wide array of things here. There may be some other letters that were called. I'm going to move forward to the next screen here that's going to show you what's commonly found on a financial aid award letter. So these are things that we will often see, though not every college lists all of these items, but the things in bold are things that you shouldn't be surprised by any means to see listed on your award letter. So this includes things like, if I can find my pointer here. There we go. So your student name or student ID number, that's always listed on your financial aid award letter. Any sort of state funding or state grants. Here in California, there's something called a Cal Grant, but there's definitely other state funding available to groups that are not part of California. You see the award amounts for each type of aid being offered, so what is that dollar value? Federal Stafford unsubsidized loans, that's a very common form of loan that's offered to undergraduate students. Letter E, the total amount of aid offered by term. So you often will see on an award letter your financial aid broken down either on a quarterly or a semester basis, as well as the annual amount that you're being offered. Letter F, cost of attendance. So cost of attendance, can actually get some responses to that. I'm going to come back to Rob. But if you guys can chat to me a couple things that you think are included in cost of attendance, that would be great. We're going to come back to this one in a second. The cost of attendance is definitely one that a common piece of information you see on your award letter. Also, your federal Pell Grant, that's a very popular form of federal aid. That's free money that many students qualify for. I is work study, that's another very popular item that you see on many financial aid award letters. Unmet need, which is the difference between your financial need and cost of attendance. So that's commonly listed as well. Expected family contribution, which you can find on your FAFSA. So that's also, again, something else you'll see. University grants or institutional grants. So these are private funds that are offered through the school that you're attending. Parent Plus loan, a loan that's issued from the federal government specifically to parent borrowers. Federal Perkins loan is another federal type of loan program. The total amount of aid offered for the overall academic year, so you're going to have that grand total listed. Federal Stafford subsidized loan, so another example of a loan program that's very popular. You do often see a section where you can choose to accept or decline any financial aid, individual type of aid, so that's also listed there. And the last one that you often see is your financial need. So it's cost of attendance, which I'm going to have Rob jump in here and share off some responses here in a second, minus your expected family contribution. These other ones that are not bold, outside scholarships you've applied to, that could come into a revised financial aid package, but typically colleges that are issuing you this financial aid award letter don't know about other scholarships that you've applied to or received. So until you notify them about that, they're not going to be listing that on your award letter. And is hourly wage offered for your federal work study program? That's not information that's provided. That's something you'll have to calculate and talk with your financial aid office about. Same for number of hours you'd work per week if you're doing work study. That's something you'd also have to calculate on your own. Outside scholarships you've received. So it's sort of like scholarships you've applied to and scholarships you've received. The colleges would not know anything about that until you notify them. Intended area of study or your major that's not listed, that's information that's not relevant to your financial aid award letter at all. V is a very tricky one. I heard a couple of V's there. That information is not going to be there at all. Your financial aid award letter is created on an annual basis. So every single year while you're enrolled in college, you'd be getting a new financial aid award letter. And X is the estimated monthly payment. That's not something that's there, and that's something that requires a little bit of research and calculation for yourself. But that's not at all information that you can expect to look for. So Rob, are there any responses as far as what cost of attendance commonly includes?
Yeah, so we have cost of attendance equals, someone said tuition, someone else said transportation, food, and lodging, tuition, room and board, tuition fees, room and board. Those are the most common answers.
Great. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I think you guys covered a lot of the bases there. Cost of attendance is basically the total cost to attend college. That includes educational costs as well as living expenses. And you guys have listed some great examples of what that includes, including tuition and fees, room and board, transportation. So all of the financial aid information that's provided is really an effort to help meet those costs. So that cost of attendance becomes a much smaller number if you're paying for anything out of pocket. So we're going to move on now that we've covered a little bit about what an award letter is and what information you find. We're going to move on and switch gears to look at some sample financial aid award letters and then do some analysis to figure out which of the two is the better offer. So unfortunately, there's really no standard financial aid award letter template that exists that all colleges use. So what is coming around effective as of this 2013-14 school year is that about 2,000 schools, or 44% of post-secondary institutions, are using something called a college shopping sheet. So there are, that's a fairly significant number of schools that are presenting their financial aid award information in this sort of format. But again, not every school is doing this. And we're going to take a quick look at this, at what that includes. So first and foremost, you'll see at the top here some basic information about the college that you're attending, so the college name as well as your student name and an identifier. So a lot of colleges assign students a student ID number, very common in what you have in high school, but it's assigned by the college. You'll also have your estimated cost of attendance. So this is all that same sort of information we just talked about a moment earlier, broken down here and itemized. They have a whole section for gift aid. So this includes any free funds that are available to help pay for college. So this includes things like scholarships from your college, as well as federal and state grants. Your net cost. This is a really key piece of information. And if anything, it's equally as important, if not more important, than cost of attendance. So this is basically cost of attendance minus gift aid equals net cost. So this is, factoring all that free money you've got now what that cost to attend college is going to be. So that's a very important figure to keep in mind. Now, how you make up for this net cost and how you look at how to close that amount, it's basically a combination of these items on the bottom. So it's a combination of work study, it's a combination of accepting loans, and it's a combination of any sort of family contribution. So if mom or dad are helping out, or you have a savings account, it's basically a blend of all of these three options to try to cover that net cost. And then on the other side here, you've got some basic information about the school. So it's really nice that all of this information is transparent, it's laid out. There's information about graduation rate, about loan repayments and how that works and some different options. And then at the very bottom section here, there's a little bit of information about how to get in contact with your school's financial aid office. These are all really important things. Again, not every school offers that information laid out in that format. So while some of your schools may give you something like that, a lot of schools will give you their own specific award letter that may have some of that information, but definitely formatted a little bit differently. So what I want to do now is walk you through a 5-step process of how you can break down the information on your award letters. Regardless of how your award letters are formatted, you definitely want to apply this sort of approach as you're looking at the award letter. So first and foremost, you just want to take a look at the award letter, scan it, see what information is listed and what's provided there. Second, you want to prioritize your award. So take a look at all the financial aid that's being offered, and you basically want to rank them from most preferable to least preferable, so that you really understand what aid are they offering you and in what amounts, and what automatically would you take hands down. Third, you want to calculate the college's net price or their net cost. Again, you're taking the cost of attendance minus all of that free financial aid so that you have a really good understanding of what amount you need to account for in the form of work study, loans, and any family contribution. Fourth, you want to assess what other remaining aid is left. So once you factor out all the gift aid and the free funds, really take a look at what are they offering you. Some schools do offer work study, some don't. Some offer certain types of loans to you, some don't. And you're the same applicant applying to all of these different colleges. So you would think that you'd get a similarly comprised financial aid package, but that's not always the case. And the last thing that you want to do is basically recalculate your finances. So once you've got this net price, you want to take a look at all of the different other aid that's being offered and figure out what is your unmet need. And that's basically the difference between your financial aid offer and your cost of attendance. The bottom line here is, for number 5, you're trying to figure out what you need in order to fully afford your college costs. So we're going to take a look at a little example here. This is an award letter from a private university. This is the University of Portland up in Oregon. And for the 2014 school year, their cost of attendance here listed on their website was $51,000. And we're going to make the assumption that their estimated or expected family contribution, I should say, is 0. So based on their FAFSA information and based on the income of the household, that family contribution is basically 0. So taking a minute here to look at this award letter. The first thing I want to do is kind of just walk us through this process. So first we want to scan the award letter and take a look at what actually is being laid out here. So once we do that, we'll see there's kind of a blend of things here. So we've got a private scholarship, something that's coming from the university. We've also got a university grant. There's a subsidized loan that's being offered, as well as an unsubsidized loan. And then there's a Parent Plus loan. There's also some work study being offered. And what's nice about this award letter is that they're breaking it down for you. So they're actually separating out your gift aid, which is close to $20,000, and the work study and the loans, which is the self-help aid, which is close to a little over 27,000. And as you'll look at this, you'll also see it's broken down by semester. So we've got the fall total, the spring total, and then the total for the whole year. So the grand total that's being offered is $47,460. So I want you guys to help me out with step 2 here, and I want you to help me prioritize of the aid that's listed on this award letter. Give me the ranking from most favorable aid all the way down to least favorable. So let's start with most favorable. Can you guys just quickly chat to me? What is the most favorable aid? What's the type of financial aid that you would just automatically accept? So our choices are scholarships, grants, we've got some unsubsidized loans, subsidized loans, Parent Plus loan, and work study. So we're trying to rank these all.
Scholarships and President's Scholarships is number 1. Look like grants is right there too.
Great. Perfect. So, I think people sometimes can debate what's better, scholarships or grants. At the end of the day, they're both free money. So they automatically both, I'd say, are most preferable. Kind of how you rank the others is really dependent on your personal situation. I'm going to throw up one possible solution. There may be people that disagree with this, but gift aid is definitely the best. I think we can all agree there. Work study is, in general, I think the second most favorable. That does take into account that the student is going to be working. So if you as a student, maybe don't feel like you have time to commit to a work study job, which is often just a part-time job on campus. Some students may say, for my first year, or maybe, for my first fall semester, I don't think I want to take that because I want to focus on being a student, and that's perfectly legitimate. But in the grand scheme of things, and I think if we kind of polled college students that are out there, enrolled in college, work study generally tends to be the second most favorable, just because it is so flexible. and it's money that's earned, and you don't have to pay any money back or any interest. The next most preferable, so I know a lot of times people have some concerns or hesitancy about accepting loans, but even among loans, there are definitely loans that are more favorable than others. So the third type of aid that I would say next we would want to solicit and definitely secure is subsidized loans. So those are the absolute best loans you can take, followed by unsubsidized loans. So the big difference here is that with subsidized loans, your loans are basically not accruing interest while you're in college. So there's no interest being earned until you graduate or until you drop down below full-time status. So there's a lot of advantages to taking this. Unsubsidized loans, the interest rates are just the same as the subsidized. The only difference is that with an unsubsidized loan, your interest is accruing while you're in college and enrolled in college. So that makes them slightly less favorable. And the last loan, again, some students may say, my parents are able to help me, so I would prioritize that and maybe choose to have my mom or dad take out a loan before I take out a subsidized loan. But just looking at the terms and conditions, parent loans are not as advantageous as the student loans. The interest rates are not as great. The repayment rates, the grace period, they're still good loans, but compared to the ones offered here, subsidized, followed by unsubsidized, followed by parent loans is generally the way to go. So third, we're going to be calculating the college's net price. So again, that's going to be the cost of attendance, which was $51,000, minus the gift aid, so all of these free funds. So that makes the college slightly more affordable. The cost now is brought down to $30,900. Now, if we're looking at what else is being offered, we're on step 4. We're looking at what remaining aid is there to look at and choose from. We're going to be basically focusing on this section. We're looking at subsidized loans, unsubsidized loans, the parent, and the work study. And so one thing that really jumps out at me here is that, $27,000 is what remains, but close to $20,000 of that is in a parent loan. So that's pretty substantial and that's pretty high. Just there's $3,500 in subsidized, $2,000 in unsubsidized, and $2,000 in work study. So in the grand scheme of what's being offered, the majority of that grand total of $27,000 is really coming from this Parent Plus loan. And lastly, assuming we're taking all of these funds, assuming mom or dad is able to take this loan, and assuming you're willing to take out these different student loans as well as commit to the work study, your unmet need and sort of your bottom line figure is you're going to need $3,540, a little over $3,500 in order to be able to afford the University of Portland. So we're going to take a minute to switch gears and look at a second example. I chose an example local to California, so this is considered an in-state school versus University of Portland, a private school. So I just want to take a minute here and have you guys chat with me to answer number 1. So what information do you guys see here? Because the format looks very different from University of Portland, and it looks very different from that other example I showed a little earlier in slides for the college shopping sheet. So I just want you guys to chat over to Rob and myself some of the things that you guys are seeing on this award letter.
It's broken out by semester. You see grants, loans, and scholarships, housing.
Mm-hmm.
COA is broken out.
Great.
Health insurance. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. So great. You guys are definitely in line with the things that I was seeing. So first and foremost, I noticed that cost of attendance was listed here, and it wasn't on the previous example. But again, this is something you commonly find. It's also itemized here as well, so there's a breakdown of what fee is being assigned to what different line item. I also noticed that the expected family contribution here was 0, so they listed a $0 amount here. Some of the other things I was looking at was the awards that were being offered. So I noticed that it was a blend of federal and state funds. We have some private scholarships that are coming in. We also have a combination of subsidized and unsubsidized loans as well. And kind of interesting enough, there's no work study or parent loans that were being offered, unlike the other ones. And just kind of doing some further analysis, things are broken down by semester as well, and the total year is listed. But in the status section, you can see what exactly the student chose to accept. So if they decided to take that award, they listed it as accepted. And you can see here the loans were offered, but the student did not choose those. So they did not decide to accept those loans. So that was a little interesting thing that I saw as well. Awards are listed by semester and annually, so that's comprehensive. Prioritizing the aid from most to least favorable. So again, if I had to now categorize this and figure out what would I accept first versus last, I would say again, gift aid first. So there's some Cal grants there, there's a scholarship, there's a Pell Grant, there's a Bobcat grant, which I'm guessing is a university grant basically. I would accept all of that first. I would then choose subsidized loans followed by unsubsidized loans. And then looking at my net price, what would be due once I factor in all those free funds, I basically have $8,500 left remaining. And interesting enough, when I get down to step 4 and I'm looking at what other aid is being offered, my loans that are here listed total $8,500. So in theory, if I chose to accept those loans, my balance would be 0, but because the student did not accept those loans, they do still have that unmet need of $8,500. So they either had to find, another part-time job. They may have found outside scholarships. They also may have found ways to bring down some of this cost in order to make the college cost overall more affordable. But in theory here, had the student accepted loans, everything would have been covered. So I'm going to pose it out to you guys. And assuming that one student got both of these award letters, which do you think, in your opinion, is the better offer? And if you could just offer like a quick sentence on why you think that was the better offer, that would be great.
The second one, because COA was fully covered. Second one, the student didn't assume any loans. Public school, it's cheaper, more grants and scholarships available. Second one doesn't rely on loans, so pretty much everyone's saying second one.
Overall, everyone's saying second one. All right. So let's just do a quick refresher here. University of Portland, cost of attendance, $51,000. EFT was 0. So in theory, the college is trying to meet the student's financial needs of $51,000. So it's the college's job to try to come up with a package that gets as close to this figure as possible. The college came back and offered a package valuing $47,460. It's very common for colleges to get close, but not exactly or perfectly meet the financial need of the student. So there oftentimes is a little bit of a gap there. The total in gift aid or free aid was $20,000, so it's a pretty significant portion, which left the student with a net price of $30,900. Unmet need, assuming the student basically accepted this full $47,460, the student would have to come up with a little over $3,500 left. Compared to University of California, UC Merced, COA, $33,452. EFT again was still 0, so that was the financial need of the students. The package perfectly matched that. That's a very rare thing, but you do see that from time to time, so that's a great great thing that we love seeing. The gift aid was very significant. If you look at how much gift aid makes up the total aid offered, that's a very high percentage. So there's a lot of gift aid being offered. The net price that the student would have to come up with was $8,500. They were offered this in the form of loans, but decided to reject that. So they still had to come up with $8,500. At the end of the day, yes, UC Merced was the better letter, but it did require a little bit of analysis in terms of what was being offered to make that conclusion. So just a quick review again. So the quick steps, you definitely want to scan your letter, just do a quick glance through it, see what's being offered. You want to rank your aid from most to least favorable. You want to calculate and figure out what is that net price. So subtract out all of your free aid or your gift aid from the cost of attendance to get that number. Look at the remaining aid being offered, a blend of work study, which is earned funds, as well as borrowed money. And if there's any savings or parent contribution, you definitely want to factor that in. And then you want to calculate that unmet need to figure out how much do you need to be able to realistically be able to attend that college. And you definitely want to look at your own award letters and go through this process in order to decide what college is the most affordable. So I always get questions about unmet need, and many students find that they still have unmet need even after getting those award letters. So there's two basic ways to cover that. And again, I want you guys to chat with me and let me know, what do you think are those ways that you can cover your unmet need?
Savings, private loans, outside scholarships, 529 plan, private loans, working a separate job, working over the summer, family.
Let's see if this helps. You're trying to bring something down.
Nothing else. They're
Nope.
silent.
All right. So there's two basic ways to do this. So first, reducing your expenses. So reducing that COA amount. And one thing that people, I think, may overlook as they're looking at cost of attendance and pulling that information off the website is that that's basically the average cost of attendance for a student to go to that university. But certainly not every student that goes to that public school that I listed in the example, not every student that goes to UC Merced pays $33,452 exactly. So that's definitely the average cost to attend. So there are definitely ways that you can look at reducing or lowering your expenses. I know this isn't always ideal, but definitely a big money saver is to look at alternate housing options. Living on campus can be pretty expensive, so living at home is something some students decide to do. They look at borrowing books, or purchasing them off of discounted book sites, limiting personal expenses, and also, just kind of looking at alternate forms of entertainment. So bringing down expenses, and the second way is looking at how to increase your income or funding. And so these are things that a lot of people had already ticked off as far as examples and ways to do this. But things like scholarships, looking at other loan options, work study, or alternate work options. So as we get close to wrapping up here, the last main objective that I wanted to spend some time going over was looking at tips for navigating the award letter process and key questions that you want to be asking your financial aid office, or information you should know as a student looking at that first year of college. So a couple of big things here. First, again, I can't hone in on this enough, definitely sort the aid that's being offered. You want to break down the different types of awards and categorize them, and really just note that sometimes the school that's offering the most funding may not overall have the best package. We saw in one example a very high value package be produced by a university, but when we actually looked at it, 20,000 of that was in one single loan that a parent was being asked to take out. So, you know, definitely do some analysis there. And also note that sometimes the schools that have the highest cost of attendance might not actually be the most expensive once you really take a look at that financial aid package. Second, the award letters could change from year to year. So every single year, students do need to complete their FAFSA in order to reapply for financial aid for the next academic year. And if for any reason your financial situation changes, or maybe funding available to the colleges, if that changes, your financial aid award letter could be impacted as well. We definitely talked about this in some detail. Award letters are formatted differently across schools. Even here in California, University of California, there's a number of campuses here, and even though they're all part of the same system, their award letters look different. So don't be thrown off if you see an award letter that looks completely different from some of the others that you've already received. And you still want to read through those extremely carefully. You decide what to accept. So as a student, you have the option to accept or deny any form of aid that's being offered. You do want to keep in mind, though, that once you decline an award, you basically are forfeiting that funding. So it could be difficult to get it back later if you need it. So we always advise students at GLOW to accept work study, accept loans, and you're really not obligated to take any of that until you sign, especially in the context of loans, until you sign any paperwork. You're not bound to taking that, but it gives you that option in case outside scholarships, for example, don't come in. But it's much harder to get it back once you say you've declined it. And last but not least, special circumstances. Sometimes when you fill out the FAFSA and you get your EST back or you get your award letter, it's not really a true depiction of your financial situation. And so if you do have special circumstances in regards to finances, you do want to work with your financial aid office and get in touch with them ASAP. A lot of times, college has some sort of appeal process that they use or some sort of form or letter that they request you send to them. So definitely get in touch with your financial aid office sooner than later to figure out what that process is about. And, you know, hopefully they can try to work with you to get you more funding if you need it. And this is going to, it's a comprehensive listing of some key questions that you want to ask as it relates to your financial aid. As a follow-up to this webinar, I'm going to have this available in the form of a handout so you guys can have all these questions in your toolbox. But there's a few key questions here that I think you know, everyone needs to ask and really needs to think about as they're looking at financial aid. So I'm just going to point to a couple of those here. One thing I think people are thinking about as they look at cost of attendance, they really need to also think about what expenses are listed. Sometimes expenses are not listed on award letters, or, you know, again, they're taken off of the average student that goes to that school. So if you are looking at a school out of state, for example, transportation might be quoted at $500 or $600. But if you're going out of state and you know you might need a plane fare or you might need extra gas money or train, you know, if you're purchasing a train ticket, there are certain things maybe for your personal situation that might be a little bit higher than what's listed on your award letter. So as much as possible, you do want to take into account your personal situation. Things like scholarships, I think this is another question that I see a lot. You definitely want to ask your schools about how they process outside scholarships. If your student, or if you as a student get a scholarship valued at $1,000 and you report that to your college, does that reduce the amount of scholarships that are already being offered, or do they then reduce your overall loan amount by $1,000? Sometimes schools, unfortunately, reduce the amount of grants or scholarships being offered if you get outside scholarships. So you definitely want to know how that policy is employed at your particular college. And ask this of all your colleges so you know how that's going to work. A couple other things here that I would just point out in the work study section. If you are looking at work study and considering that, which is a valid option, a lot of students do use work study. You want to think about not only how much is being offered to you, but try to do some math there as far as breaking that down. So if you're looking at work study and thinking about your own school schedule and class schedule, you want to start thinking about how many hours a week can you realistically afford to work, knowing kind of your area study and class schedule. You also want to figure out what's the hourly wage. Sometimes positions do have pay increases if you're there in a position for a year or two. There are definitely ways that that might fluctuate. Some common questions about loans. I think this is always a common one, just knowing more about the interest rate, terms and conditions, if there's other fees. You'll have to get in touch with your financial aid office or your lender once you accept the loan to get additional information. Great. And I guess before I just transition on and wrap up slowly here, the one other tip I would offer is that if you have any questions about your financial aid award letter, please do not hesitate to contact your financial aid office. They are used to getting these sorts of inquiries, and it's always better to know early than to find out down the road that something wasn't calculated or you're misinformed about something. So get in touch with them. And at this point, I'm going to open it up to questions from the group, and feel free to chat away and let us know if there's anything that's unclear or if there's any other clarification I can provide.
All right, so questions. We have a few already in the queue, Alana, so I'll fire away here. Are we required to notify the school of outside scholarships received, if any?
Yes, I definitely would say to let your school know. A lot of times scholarships are sent directly to the college versus to the student. So the college does need to know that scholarships from local organizations, outside organizations are on the way, so that they keep an eye out for that. And as a general practice, I think it's just kind of a safer way to go. All that being said, I know there is concern or fear about gift aid being reduced as you get that. So as I mentioned earlier, you definitely want to check with your school and their policy of how they handle outside scholarships. They also make those changes reflective in an updated award letter. So they'll give you an updated copy once they have your full financial aid situation, both from the school and what they offer to you, as well as outside scholarships factored in.
Great, thanks. My financial aid award letter does not list work study, only listing subsidized and unsubsidized loans. Why is that, and can I still get work study?
Yeah, so work study is based on financial need. So it sort of depends on your financial situation, but kind of the safest way I could say to approach that would be to have make contact with your financial aid office, or if there's already someone directly that you've contacted within the financial aid office who works with your specific account, to just get in touch with them, and they might be able to reassess your package, and they may be able to offer that to you. But typically it's offered to students that have high financial need.
If you accept the gift aid but turn down the loans, that won't jeopardize the gift aid amount or change the gift aid amount, correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Yeah, if someone accepts gift aid, the question is if I accept the gift aid but turn down the loans, I'll still get that gift aid. Turning down the loans won't change my gift aid amount.
No, it should not.
All right. Where do you apply for grants?
So you apply for grants, federal and state grants, as well as federal loans. Basically, any federal funding is done by applying and submitting the FAFSA. So FAFSA, www.fafsa.ed.gov, and you go online to that website. There's an application there, and that basically puts your name in the pool to apply for any federal or state-funded programs that are out there, and that includes a lot of the common grants that you see, including federal Pell Grant.
So any seniors or senior parents that haven't completed the FAFSA should do so as soon as possible, correct?
Yes. So the priority deadline here in California is March 2nd. I know that does vary by state and even sometimes by college. Sometimes they have priority deadlines for when they want financial information submitted to them. So as early as possible in the school year is kind of the most generic answer I can give. But you definitely want to get that in, as soon as possible. Earlier the better.
Great. Can you touch on the difference between Stafford subsidized versus Stafford unsubsidized loans?
Sure. So Stafford subsidized loans, they're basically, a lot of the criteria and the eligibility are very common. So the subsidized loans are for students that demonstrate financial need. So those are more preferable, and they do give, you know, additional consideration to students that have financial need. A lot of the loan amounts, the interest rates, even the grace periods are identical between the two. The biggest difference is if you have financial need, again, subsidized loans are, you know, what's first offered to you. And the biggest difference, again, between subsidized and unsubsidized is that the government pays for the interest of the loan while you're in college. So there's no interest that's accruing for, you know, 4 or 5 years, depending on how long you're enrolled in school. Unsubsidized loans are accruing interest while you're in college.
Are unsubsidized loans always better than private loans?
Yes. Yes, they are. Interest rates are lower, and even with the unsubsidized Stafford loan, there is a grace period of 6 months. So both for the subsidized and unsubsidized loans, you have 6 months after you graduate, or if for some reason you leave school, you still have to repay that loan, or if for some reason you enroll less than half time, you still have to pay that loan. But there is a more flexible grace period, and the idea is that, you know, the lender understands that once you graduate, you do need a little bit of time to find a job and get on your feet, versus typically what happens with private loans is that they want you to start repaying as soon as possible. So there's just a little bit more flexibility that comes with getting a federal loan.
When it listed COA on the second award letter and mentioned average expenses, do you
Sure.
find that the average expense that is pretty accurate, or is it lower or higher than what you typically see from students?
I think it really varies. You definitely have students that commute to college, so, you know, their cost of attendance is going to be significantly less. There are some students that live at home with mom or dad and are fortunate enough not to have to pay rent, or maybe even food, or maybe even gas. So really all that you know, particular student may be paying for is tuition and fees. There are other students that obviously, once you factor in all these living expenses, you know, they could pay for a lot more. So it's definitely, there's a huge spectrum, I think, as to what students actually pay. So, you know, it's hard to say exactly, but I think that's based on the student population they have and the data that the colleges pull. That's their best guess as to what, you know, John Smith pays coming in for that particular school year.
Is it ever possible to share a better financial aid a better financial aid offer with a school that didn't give you as good a financial aid offer if you want to go to that school? So trying to, I guess, essentially bargain um, with financial aid offices. Is that advisable? Is that something that's possible to do?
Yeah, I think, you know, especially since the same student, you know, is looking at all these different colleges, sometimes it is a little bit strange that one particular school would offer so much in grants or scholarships or work study, and, you know, school B, maybe that's a school that the student wants to go to and that's their top choice. They didn't get those options. So yes, I would definitely share that these are things that you've, your son or daughter, or you as a student, have been offered at other colleges. The other thing that I would say is to really look into that special circumstance situation that the colleges have, and they each have their own individual process and timing and forms and everything else that they use. But I think you can use that award letter as leverage, and I would also follow up and see if there's any other aid that can be offered to you or your student, especially if that college is your top school that you'd like to attend.
Thanks. Is the federally calculated family contribution based off of FAFSA/taxes? That is what they feel I can afford to pay as a parent?
Yes, so there is a mathematical formula that's associated with FAFSA. FAFSA asks about a ton of different financial information, and they have a crazy mathematical formula that spits out the EFC. So it takes into account the family income, it takes into account the number of people in a household, It takes into account the number of people enrolled in college. And based on all of these things, you know, it's giving an assumption of what they think you as a family can contribute. Again, this is something that I think a lot of people sometimes have a lot of questions around because it's not always the most realistic. And in that case, again, we advise their students to go back to the colleges and the financial aid office and really explain the situation. The other thing that we've seen is that, you know, sometimes parents are having this information, they fill out FAFSA, and something pretty drastic could have happened between when the taxes were filed and when the students get their award letter. You know, one example could be if mom or dad got laid off or their hours were cut. So really the financial situation that may have been true 3 or 6 months ago may not be what's actually happening now. And so again, we always say talk to those financial aid offices, get them familiar with your name, get them to know you and kind of you or your student or your child so that they can really try to work with you. And we definitely want you guys to explain your personal situations as well so that they can try to, you know, plug you into any sort of university aid or connect you to any other resources that they have that could really help make college more affordable and make that decision process a little easier.
Great. We have a question from someone who estimated their totals on the FAFSA. Is it possible to go back and amend that now with the real totals based on the new tax return they filed?
They can. So FAFSA is kind of a tricky animal in that once you submit your FAFSA, you can go back and make corrections and modifications. One thing, though, to note with that, you definitely want to update that information. So you want that information to be as accurate as possible. But once that information is submitted, one thing, if you remember, if you did the FAFSA, is that you do have to enter in, I think, up to 10 different school codes. And so you update FAFSA, and basically all of that information gets shared with any college that's listed on FAFSA. So once the update happens, it will take a little bit of time for those individual colleges to get back in touch with you and give you an updated financial aid package. But you do want to make sure that they have the most up-to-date financial information.
And is the FAFSA something that you complete every year before college or just once?
Every single year that the student's going to be enrolled. So at this time next year, if you are or you have a high school senior right now, hopefully you did the FAFSA or are submitting it ASAP so that they can enroll and go to college, you know, this fall. In a year's time, as the student is now a college freshman, you know, you want to make sure to get that FAFSA in again next year, just the same way you did this year, so that they have financial aid coming through for that second year when they're in college.
We have a question about COA. What are the components of COA, cost of attendance?
Sure. So cost of attendance is basically the total cost to attend college. That includes the educational costs as well as living expenses. So the most common categories are tuition and fees. Those are fixed prices. You can't negotiate with the college on that. You can't do anything on your end to move those amounts. So tuition and fees is one big area. There's also room and board, which is basically housing and food. That includes things like your dorm room, your meal plan, and a lot of colleges have different options for those. So there are ways to make some of those prices come down. The other categories that they look at are things like transportation. So any sort of travel or commuting that the student may have to do. The price they list on the websites, again, it's an average figure, and in some cases it's almost kind of an arbitrary figure because it really is dependent on the student's personal situation. And the last big expense that they commonly list is personal expenses. And again, that's completely contingent on the student, so that's also one that's very flexible.
What's the process for getting a Parent Plus loan approved? How long does that take?
I'm not too sure about the timing of it. There is a application process that's involved. So you apply for it by submitting the FAFSA. If it comes back in your financial aid award letter that you're eligible, it's going to be listed on your financial aid award letter. And then there's a whole separate process in order to take out that loan. So just like any other loan, parents would complete an application. I believe they can borrow up to the cost of attendance minus any financial aid that the student has gotten. So there's quite a big range as far as the maximum loan amount. But I think it probably varies college by college as far as how long it takes to process all of that information in the application.
Great. Well, I think that about covers it. It's almost the end of the hour here. Alana, thanks for the great presentation, and thank you everyone for all your participation and great questions. If you do have any additional questions, we will send an email within 24 hours with a link to this recording as well as some other materials, and you can reach out to Alana and contact her from there. So anything else to add before we wrap up, Alana?
No, thanks everybody for dialing in. Thanks for the great questions. And as Rob said, I'll pass forward the PowerPoint presentation so you guys have that, as well as a couple other kind of handouts/resources so that people have some additional information to walk away with. And please feel free to email me if you have any additional questions.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.